Okay, so in this video, before we get started, I just want to create this quick intro for you just to put things into context. In this video, we're going to start to set up our endpoint for our AI model in Microsoft Foundry. Now, there's two things to be aware of. One, there's a switch or a pivot that's happening right now. You have Microsoft Foundry, which is like the new name from, I think it was Azure AI Foundry and a name before that. And then you have Azure OpenAI. What's ended up happening is that Azure OpenAI has been faded out as a separate service. So everything's going to be under that Microsoft 365 Foundry. If you have Azure OpenAI today, you will see that there's an upgrade option to upgrade that to use like some of the robust Foundry services that are found only in Microsoft Foundry. So that's one, and we're going to cover that piece. The second one is that once you're in Microsoft Foundry, pay close attention to those models that are provided by Azure. That's going to be key. Models provided by Azure, these AI models provided by Azure, are curated by the Microsoft Cyber team. They're actually hosted in Microsoft Azure, where you get your own copy of the large language model. And the security and data protection that we expect will be in place for those models flagged as provided by Azure. Those other models that are not provided by Azure, but they are still part of the AI models within Microsoft Foundry, will not be explicitly hosted by Microsoft, and your data still can be running on the third-party host system, and your data can travel outside of your Azure tenant. Very critical distinction to make. Microsoft tries to plaster that as you read the descriptions of the different model, but pay close attention. That's what that filter flag is about, and I'm going to show you that in the video. Okay, let's go get started. Okay, so this is going to be our entry in our M365 AI build series for 2026, and this is really starts to build our stack for our reusable architectural design with the Power Platform interacting with AI models. So here I am. Let's do the whiteboard first. So when you talk about setting up your endpoint within Microsoft Foundry, which is the new name for AI Foundry, and I think it was Microsoft 365 AI Foundry before. But either way, so you really have there's actually a transition as of January 2026. There's a transition that's happening. So you have your Microsoft AI Foundry here, which is really going to be like the main container for everything for AI models and things along those lines within Azure and Microsoft 365. And within here, they had this initially. I'm not sure if they have this anymore, but you can have one or many hubs within your AI Foundry service. Right. So let's just say this is the Foundry service, and then the red would be your hub. And the whole purpose of the hub was that you can have many different services leveraged by the hub. And these are going to be Azure services. So you can have things like the Azure Blob Storage as a service, AI Search as a service, Cosmo DB as a service, the Azure Key Vault as a service. So all those services will be hinged on the hub. And then within the hub, you can have multiple projects, with the understanding that the projects within this hub will use the services associated to the hub, right? Now, outside along here, before Microsoft, the Foundry service container in the hub and the project architecture was introduced, Microsoft initially went to market with a separate AI enabler called the Azure OpenAI service. And this was really simplified. It did not have these different services that would be used by the AI. These were very simple deployment. And actually, all your models were under the OpenAI family. And again, OpenAI, when it comes to OpenAI, that's the creator of ChatGPT. Let's just wall this off. Let's put a line here. Everything on this side of the line is the World Wide Web or the internet. Everything on this side of the line is your internal Azure AI service or Microsoft 365 service. This side of the line is safe. This is where everything that happens within your tenant stays within your tenant. All the services and even the AI models that you're using are actually hosted inside of your tenant. So with this OpenAI model, the same models, the whole GPT family, the O1 series family, all of those are made available to you via Microsoft grabbing a copy and then hosting them inside of your Azure service. That's what makes it safe. So when they implemented Azure OpenAI service, these would be all the OpenAI models hosted inside of Azure, making them safe and keeping your data within your tenant, all this other fun stuff. Now, this is actually they're phasing this out. So what they're trying to do is that in the Foundry service, you're going to have this vast model catalog. And in this model catalog, they're going to fall under two main categories, right? You're going to have models that are provided by Azure, and these are going to be safe, curated models, 100% hosted inside of Microsoft Azure. And then you're going to have these community or third-party provided models. And these will be, even though you will have a gateway to use these models within Azure, you can go through Foundry service to configure these within Azure. These are not 100% hosted in Microsoft 365 Azure tenant. And that's a very key piece to note because, for example, Anthropic is not a Azure provided model. So when you use the Anthropic endpoint, even though you can enable it here within the Foundry service and deploy it alongside of the curated models that are provided by Azure, when you make the call using the Anthropic endpoint, it's actually going outside of your tenant and it's actually being hosted inside of the Anthropic hosting, and you're now bound to the terms and guidelines of Anthropic, like what they tell you in their terms and services of what they can and cannot do with your data, what they can and cannot read from your data. Is your data encrypted at rest? Is it encrypted in flight? So on and so forth. So you really have to pull out the fine-tooth comb to understand what your data rights are and how that large language model is being hosted. So a quick way, if you get into Azure, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and fire up our Microsoft Foundry. Actually, let me show you this. So let me go to a tenant to where we already have this deployed because I want to show you what you need to pay attention to once we deploy your models. So here is my Microsoft Foundry in a different tenant. And we're going to, in the next video, we're going to walk through setting up our Microsoft Foundry service within a brand new tenant. So you're going to see this being built from the ground up, what questions to ask, what's behind the question that need to be asked, and what you need to consider when you make your different selections. We're going to cover that in the next video. But what I do want to point out is that a lot of infrastructure or enterprise architects are not really paying attention to what it means to use a model within Azure Microsoft Foundry, right? So when you go to this model catalog and you go to see all of these models, I think we're up to 1,500 now. These collections, this is the most important option or filter you want to turn on. The direct from Azure. These are going to be curated models hosted in Azure 365. They do not touch the third party, even though DeepSync is created by, I think it's called Deep Reasoning or AI Reasoning, that company that's in Asia, right? Even though it's created by that company, this is a copy of DeepSync hosted in Azure AI Foundry. And not only is it hosted there, it went through a evaluation from Microsoft and their engineers just to evaluate the model and make sure that it's not sending data outside of the tenant, right? The same with these OpenAI models. All the OpenAI models, that whole family of collection of OpenAI, are models hosted inside of Azure. Now, if I take this off, now, for example, if I hit Anthropic, this is going to give me all the Anthropic models, the Sonnet, the Opus, and all the various versions of those. And it tells you that these are models provided by partners and community. And this is the most important line here. See Anthropic's privacy policy, and know about privacy and learn about the deployment Anthropic models. So if the model is not provided by Azure, the third party or the maker of that model determines how that model will be hosted, how would you interact with it, and more importantly, what they can and cannot do with your data. So understanding that flag is probably one of the most important things that you need to understand when you're deploying and setting up your models. Okay, in the next video, let's go ahead and start with setting up our Microsoft Foundry from scratch from a tenant. This is going to be a tenant where I do have a subscription enabled. I do have a default resource group enabled. And now we're about to start with the deployment of Microsoft Foundry. See you in the next video.